The 2025 season will be an interesting one for the NC State Wolfpack. Dave Doran has to find a way to bounce back from his first losing season since 2019, and this is going to be an interesting team in the ACC. I think that this is still a very solid team, but again, you have to find ways to get back on track in your winning ways. We'll take a deep dive into the NC State Wolfpack and see what we should expect from this team in 2025. Like I said, a 6-7 season, not terrible, but definitely not great according to NC State standards. This is a program that expects to be winning football games more than they're losing, and last year did not live up to those expectations. You're looking to get things back on track. Hopefully, the offense can take a step with a promising young quarterback and some receivers that have a ton of potential with Kurt Roper calling the shots. DJ Elliott has to get the defense up to speed, and I think they do have some intriguing players. The linebacker position specifically, I think is going to be a really fun group to pay attention to. The transfer portal and the NFL departures, you saw a number of players that made big time impacts depart. Anthony Belton, Zeke Correll, Timothy McKay, David Van, Aiden White. Those are some big names that leave you to the NFL. You also lost a handful of players in the secondary to the transfer portal, but you also lose a big time receiver in Kevin Concepcion to Texas A&M. I think overall, though, you feel all right about where you're sitting. It's one thing to have NFL talent depart. You know that you're going to have to replace that. But overall, this is a group that has done a pretty good job in terms of the coaching staff of bringing in guys that are going to compete right away. The offensive line will see some of those players that step up. Teague Anderson and Jalen Grant could be two starters for this team. We'll talk about them more a little bit later. The defense is really where you saw an influx of talent, specifically in the secondary, the linebacker position, though you do bring in a couple of players on the defensive line that are going to be interesting. I think that they will make big time impacts in a way for this group, a defense that, like I said, needs to play better than they did in 2024. And that's going to be a group that has to step up. But the offense also has the potential to do so, but they need to show it. And most of that is going to hinge on CJ Bailey and what he can do. CJ Bailey is a very talented player who was thrust into the starting role when Grayson McCall is no longer an option. And you saw some of what he's capable of doing. Over 2,400 yards last year, 17 touchdowns. You obviously want to see him reduce those 10 interceptions, but that's a young player trying to learn how to play the game of football at the next level. And maybe he was put into the starting lineup earlier than you wanted, but now he knows what it takes. And he's a guy who I think has the ability to make some really fun plays with his arm. He also can do some things that are really exciting with his legs. 279 yards last year, 5 touchdowns as a runner. But the CJ Bailey show is ultimately going to dictate the success of this offense. And this is an offense that you should feel pretty good if you're an NC State fan. I think you have plenty of returning talent that is ready to explode this year if everything goes to plan. And part of that is going to be on CJ Bailey. If he is able to make some of those plays we know he's capable of making, then you're looking at an offense that is going to reach new heights. He has the talent, he has the ability, and it's on Kurt Roper to get him in positions to be successful. Behind him is where you maybe have a little bit more concern. Lex Thomas, Will Wilson, young players just like CJ Bailey, but don't have that year of experience. Again, CJ Bailey's learning curve is going to dictate how well this team can play, because if he's learned a lot, then one, the ACC is going to be in trouble. But if he needs a little bit more time, then some other guys might have to step up at other positions. Fortunately for this group, you have guys that also, like CJ Bailey, have not hit their stride quite yet. Hollywood Smothers is a guy who's another young player that saw a ton of time last year, 571 yards on the ground, 6 touchdowns. He also caught 19 passes last year for 263 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is a player you can get in space. That's a player you can get the ball to, and he is able to make big plays. 6.4 yards per carry, 13.8 yards per reception. That's a big time playmaker. If you can get him the football more often, you're feeling like you have a good player in place to make some of those things happen, move the sticks, get the ball down the field, and take some pressure off your young quarterback. Jaden Scott, Duke Scott, if you will, He's another player that is expected to take on a bigger role this year. You saw a little bit of what he could do, in the offseason. You've seen what I think that he might bring to the table. We just haven't, you didn't see it last year, but I think he is ready to take on a bigger role. After that, maybe the depth is not what you want it to be, but I think that there's a group that is eager to prove their worth. And there's some young guys that are going to be a part of that. That bodes well for you long term if these guys can show progress, if they can show that they're developing. Bailey's obviously going to be the biggest one. If he shows progress, if he's able to show that I have taken a step in my development, I've become a better passer, I've been able to make better decisions, those are going to be things that help this offense tremendously. He does have some talent in the backfield with him. However, there's a lot that is hinged on the quarterback, unfortunately. That's just the nature of football. College football is going to be like that. And CJ Bailey has a great opportunity in front of him. And young players sometimes need time to get acclimated to the college game. And he's just one of those guys. I'm excited to see what he does this year and excited to see what that means for NC State. Now, the guys that he's throwing to are also going to play a part of that. And he has some really interesting offense options. He has really good talent. Noah Rogers is someone who, if you're looking for a guy that can be a big time player, he is definitely in that category. You also have Wesley Grimes, who can do some really exciting things as well. You want to see what they can do in a full season with CJ Bailey feeling more confident. Those are two guys that could step up. Justin Jolie at tight end is the top returning pass catcher from last year, 43 catches, 661 yards, and 4 touchdowns. A very good target for anybody that's playing quarterback. Could be CJ Bailey's top target, is go-to weapon when he needs someone to find downfield, or if he's feeling pressure, he knows that he has a guy he can throw to, and good things should happen. Behind Jolie, you have Dante Daniels, Cody Hardy. Those guys could be good depth pieces. We'll see what they're capable of doing. You also have some interesting talent behind Rogers and Grimes. Now, the slot position is going to be interesting to see who will play that. You have a lot of freshmen and younger players that feel like they're going to be part of the rotation this year. Jonathan Paylor is one of those guys that could be part of that. Keenan Jackson, I'm not really sure who is going to be that starter right now, but you have guys that could step up and play bigger roles. Jarrell Boulder is a freshman who's going to play a role in this offense this year. I think that they're excited about his abilities. Terrell Anderson, another young player, and young players sometimes need, like I said, that time to get acclimated with their new role. But you look at Keenan Jackson, last year, 12 catches, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. Terrell Anderson, 14 catches, 158 yards, 1 score. So you have guys that have a bit of experience. Now they're going to step into larger rotational roles. And what do they do with that experience? What do they do with those opportunities is going to be the biggest question. Jolie is a good option. Rogers and Grimes are reliable. And you still want to see those guys take on bigger roles. Because again, Kevin Concepcion, KC Concepcion, whatever he's going by, 53 catches last year, 460 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Those targets have to go to someone else. And it's going to be a matter of who takes that role. Is it Rogers? Is it Grimes? Does Jolie get more targets? Does he have more catches? Those are big things that will need to be figured out by the time that the season gets rolling around, because you need to figure out who's going to be open, who's going to step up for a quarterback that has a ton of potential and is looking for his guys to support him as well as they did last year, but also take a step. Part of that also is how he has time to throw, how much room the running backs have to run. And this is an intriguing group of offensive linemen. You have 3 potential starters that are going to be new to your program on the right side and at center. Jalen Grant comes in for Purdue, can play guard, can play center. A young guy that I think that they are excited about and could push for starting time right away. Spike Sowles is going to be a really interesting guy to play at center if they're able to get him in the lineup. If Grant's the guy, great. If you have to go to the freshman, then that's just fine too. Brock Stews comes from North Carolina A&T. He and Valen Erickson are going to be competing for one of the guard positions. Teague Anderson is going to be your starter at right tackle. It looks like Utah State transfer. He'll be someone that has a ton of experience and gives you kind of a solid player, more of that high floor type player at the tackle position. Jacarius Peak is the guy opposite of him, Anthony Carter. Those are two guys that give you good experience. I think that they are two veterans that will help some of those new guys get acclimated. Some of the younger players that need some time to learn the system or understand what it takes to be a starter. Peak and Carter are two great guys to have come back, especially when you lose Anthony Belton, Timothy McKay, Zeke Correll. You're losing quality talent, and you're going to need someone to give these new guys an opportunity to show what they can do, but also understand what it takes to win day in and day out. And this is a program that overall has done a good job of that. I think that this is a fun team to watch when they are playing well. They are a tough team. They are a team that claws and fights for every yard they get. And Dave Doran has built a great culture at NC State, a team that expects to be in competition with the best of the best. Didn't happen last year, but this is a team that very much can get back to that. It all starts up front. You feel pretty good about the addition of Grant, Stukes, and Anderson. You feel pretty good about some of the depth you have. It's just some of the, you see a lot of last year, you saw a lot of freshmen, redshirt freshmen playing bigger roles. And sometimes that's good because you have talent, and sometimes that means that you're struggling at certain positions. Health obviously will be a concern for certain positions as well. Sometimes that's just going to play a factor. And it'll be interesting to see how this group performs. You have three new faces coming into this offensive line, a center that's going to be working with a young quarterback. That's going to be a key player. Maybe it's the freshman and so on, and you're going to see two younger guys that have to work with each other and figure things out on the fly. Those could be things that happen this year that NC State has to figure out. But overall, you still feel pretty optimistic about what this team can do in 2025 because it just won't, I don't think it's going to be worse than it was in 2024. The defense also has work to do. It's not purely on the offense to sort things out. This defense has to figure out their stuff as well. And this is going to be a group that it's probably going to be their traditional 3-3-5 that we've seen. Could go more 3-4 if they have someone that can be a good edge rusher. We'll see what happens there. All teams kind of rotate things around, but NC State has a group of defensive linemen that are kind of unknown right now in terms of what they're capable to do on a consistent basis. The ends are going to be where you really see some new faces and potentially see more rotation. Travali Price is a guy that they expect big things from. They did last year, didn't obviously work out, but they still expect big things from him. Isaiah Shirley, you also have Sebastian Harsh coming from Wyoming. He'll push for time. Joseph Adedare is going to be coming in from Texas Tech. He'll be part of that. Chase Bond as well. So you have a solid core of guys that will be able to rotate in. It's just going to come down to who's going to be able to play that role, who's going to step up and elevate their game to where this team needs it to be. Because in the past, NC State's been good because their defenses have played lights out. Now, a lot of that has to do with the linebackers that we know and have loved in the past, but the defensive line is kind of the underrated group ever since, Bradley Chubb's probably the big one that everybody knows, but this is a team that's had some really good defensive linemen, and they're going to have to find some new ones this year. On the interior, at least the nose tackle position, Brandon Cleveland is going to be a solid player for them, a very productive player in his time as a nose tackle for at least nose tackle standards. The depth behind him is really where you have questions. You don't necessarily know who's going to be that quality backup, who will be able to spell him if he needs a break, because he's going to need a break at that position. It's really hard to stay on the field at that position because of how much energy it takes to play. You need to find some depth pretty quick, and that will, with the schedule that you face, there will be some big time teams that you'll have to rotate guys in, and that could take some time. That could mean that you're in for a long night, but also you could be in for a battle. And if you don't have the depth, things aren't going to go your way. Now, the linebacker position does have quite a bit of excitement, and there's probably a rotation of 6, maybe 7 guys that you feel pretty good about. The starters, for sure, just a matter of who those guys are going to be. Sean Brown is an honorable mention all ACC player from last year. Caden Fordham, if he was not injured, I think would have had an even bigger year than what we saw from him last year. And this is a guy who had 48 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. Sean Brown, 96 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. If those two are healthy and playing at their peak, they're really exciting. You also bring in Kenny Soares Jr. from Northwestern. You bring in Trey Thomas from Temple. Cian Sloan is going to be part of that rotation as well. AJ Richardson from Norfolk State. You have a quality group of linebackers and a deep group that could be really special this year. Kelvin McBride and Zane Williams are also part of that, but it's going to come down to what is the starting lineup going to look like and what is the peak of this group? How do you find what this group is capable of? Keeping guys healthy. I think Fordham is a guy that if he's healthy, he really dictates the ceiling of this team. And one of these guys, Trey Thomas, I think is a guy coming in from Temple, could be that edge rusher that they're looking for. Maybe you throw Sebastian Harsh out from your defensive end rotation if he is more of that rotational player that can rush the quarterback. You look at what he did with Wyoming. He was very good at getting after the quarterback, but Trey Thomas is another guy that could be part of that as well. But the point is here, the linebacker position is in a good place. And even if you have some concerns up front, if you have some sorting out to do up front, the linebacker position will at least give you that peace of mind knowing that you can go through some of those struggles and still have success. I think that this is not maybe the traditionally elite linebacker group that you've had, but they have the potential to keep that tradition going and play really well as a collective unit. That's going to be something to keep an eye on if you're an NC State fan, and that will help a defense that, like I said, is going through a little bit of a transition at certain positions. The secondary is kind of in that same boat. You do lose quite a bit of talent to the transfer portal. You see guys graduate, and you have a lot of new faces that will either be coming in or stepping into new roles. Now, they did add a couple players that will be either starters or part of a serious rotation and maybe even push for starting time. The cornerback position, you see Devin Marshall. He'll be battling with North Texas transfer Brian Nelson II. Brian Nelson is a ball hawking corner that can make some big time plays. We'll see how they utilize him, but he is someone that's going to push right away for starting time. Jackson Vick and Temple transfer Jamal Johnson, those would be two guys that compete for the other cornerback spot. So competition is good in this defense. If you have guys competing, you have guys that can potentially step up, and you have some proven talent that's coming in, and you have some newer talent that maybe is stepping in to a little bit of a bigger role that they're not maybe used to. Again, when you lose the amount of talent that NC State did, you're going to have to find certain players that are able to replace them. And it probably won't be one-to-one. It'll be a collective group that does that. The safety position is really no different. JJ Johnson, someone they're really excited about coming in from Georgia State. He arguably has one of the safety spots locked up. Rente Hinton is going to be one that competes for the other spot. Ronnie Royal could be in that. Brody Barnhart. Those are two guys to keep an eye on as rotational pieces, as depth pieces, but could also push for starting time at the safety position. Jaron Sensabaugh is a redshirt freshman that is young and ready to potentially take on that nickel role. Assad Brown is going to push him for there as well. So the secondary is going to be new faces, whether it's young faces, guys that are ready to take on a new position and it's their first time in a starting position, or you have transfer portal talent. The defense overall has a lot of new faces, a lot of new pieces that need to sort themselves out. That's where having the linebackers that we talked about and their experience helps a ton. And getting guys up to speed, getting in the right place is something that we kind of take for granted at times. Having a group of linebackers that can get the front set, can get the defensive backfield going, that's an underrated part of your defense. And this is a team that has to improve on that side of the football. And the schedule that they give you is going to allow them to potentially make some strides in that department, or at least give you some time. Now, the ECU game right off the bat is a rematch of the bowl game from last year. That is going to be a tough one. ECU is a team that is looking to make a run at an AAC championship, and you don't necessarily know what you're going to get from the Pirates. You also then get a Virginia team that is looking to be better than what people expect. So we'll see how that all plays out for the Cavaliers. 2 road trips to Wake Forest and Duke could be sneakily difficult. We'll see what happens with those 2 games. Duke is definitely a team to keep an eye on. If you're any fan of an ACC team, they are going to be much better than I think people realize, and they have a defense that is going to make life pretty miserable overall in 2025. Then you go to hosting Virginia Tech and Campbell back to back. You have to make sure that you take care of business there. You can't get caught looking ahead to the trip to Notre Dame on October 11th. That's not going to be an easy game by any means, but you can't get caught looking ahead, especially in that Virginia Tech game. That is a team that's going to play with a lot of desperation. They're looking to keep their head coach's job secure, and that will be tougher probably than they anticipate. The road trip to Notre Dame will also be a big time challenge. Then you get a little bit of a break. You get a bye week before you go to Pitt and host Georgia Tech. That's a tougher 2-game stretch. Georgia Tech was kind of the surprise of the ACC last year, and they are a very good football team that is going to make life very difficult for NC State. Then you get your final bye week of the year before you go at Miami, Florida State, and North Carolina. So overall, you have challenging games, but also there are winnable games on this schedule. I don't think there are too many concerns about what this team is capable of doing. And when you look at what I think this team could do in terms of winning, you see a potential to bounce back from, again, a kind of a disappointing year. Overall, I think a 6-7 year isn't bad for a lot of college football teams, but I think NC State has gotten to a point where they expect a little bit better than that. 7-5 might have also felt like a disappointment, but you're looking at, 8 or 9 wins is probably where you're hopefully going to feel most satisfied. 6.5 is the over under right now, and the channel thinks that this is going to be a bounce back year. I think 14% say 1st through 4th, 51% say 5th through 8th, 25% 9th through 12th, and 10% 13th through 17th. So this is a team that most likely takes a step forward. The schedule gives you winnable games, like I said, and that makes for a potentially really exciting year if you're NC State. A lot of that hinges on certain players. The quarterback is one of them. If they do find a way to develop some of those guys and they do take a step forward, this will be a fun team to watch, a very tough team to beat. There are not a ton of, for sure, losable games. The Notre Dame game, Miami, those are games that will be very challenging, Duke as well. But I think that this is a team that if they play how they played in the past, it'll be a very tough team to beat, and they'll make things very interesting in 2025.